You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Eric Siegel, who's an expert in data mining and predictive analytics, and he just came out with a new book called Predictive Analytics, The Power to Predict Who Will Click, Buy, Lie, or Die. Eric, a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here, Doug.
So what do you do?
Well, predictive analytics is technology that learns from data to predict the behavior of individual people. So a lot of people think of prediction, they think of forecasting, and that might be predicting the general direction of an economy or how many ice cream cones a company is going to sell next quarter. Predictive analytics is making predictions for each individual person, customer, patient, donor for a nonprofit,
investor,
constituent, potentially investor, or potentially other organizational elements such as an individual stock price. So it wouldn't be how many ice cream cones are going to be sold, but will this individual be likely to buy an ice cream cone?
So you'll look at data mining, meaning you have somehow collect a huge pool of information, and by analyzing it, you then try to figure out what an individual within that data will do at any one point?
That's exactly correct. So you can think of data, and there's a lot of hype around how much data is growing and how much there is, as experience, because that's what it is. It's recording of things that have happened. So if you learn from that experience to make prediction by way of certain kinds of regression, decision trees, neural networks, some of these buzzwords people may have heard, this is a very broad discipline that applies across not just finance, but all sorts of industry sectors within government, law enforcement, for political campaigns, making predictions about what direction people are going to go for voting, which you can think of as a marketing application, universities, educational applications. But in one way or another, it's about predicting behavior, what people are going to do, whether they're going to, as it says in the title of the book, click, buy, lie, or die, whether they're going to steal, whether they'll thrive, drop out of school, make a donation, vote one direction or another. And as you can imagine, those types of predictions of behavior have all sorts of applications. But the value ultimately comes one way or another in driving and improving all of the operational decisions, all the actions organizations take in the way they interact and provide services to the world. And in the case of finance, it's going to be about making buy and sell decisions.
Okay, so you might look, for example, at a brokerage firm and see how their clients tend to react after getting statements, whether they buy or sell after that?
Right, so I don't know if you'd think of that as a financial application, because then you're talking about the marketing of that brokerage. But sure, just like any other company, the brokerage does marketing, and they want to determine, for example, which of our customers are we at risk of losing, who's going to defect or cancel their usage of our product and our services. And that's something that many companies do. Cell phone companies, most of the big ones do this. They target the retention efforts and the expenses for retention, the discounts that are intended to retain the phone calls made. Those resources are targeted very carefully according to where they can best serve by making that prediction, which customer are we at risk of losing. So that's one of the main marketing applications across sectors of predictive analytics.
So those are the companies that would hire someone like you in order to review what's going on, and then you could advise them for example, how to retain their clients or how to improve service in a certain area?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, companies have an incredible amount of data about their customers. Usually this kind of thing can be done to a great degree just using the internal data that already exists. So data is just sort of like the residue of the function and operations of organization. It's being collected, it's aggregating, and it has this whole sort of secondary purpose, which is you can learn from it. So organizations are sitting on this data. They could potentially make great use of it to make predictions.
And do you need a whole lot of data, or can someone look at his own household budget or his own portfolio, and is that enough data to make any statistically significant analysis?
Well, that's a great question. For most individual investors, even if one way or another they've accumulated a lot of data, and you can download a great deal of data in terms of the behavior of certain instruments, but usually the application of actual prediction and acting on prediction is something reserved more for organizations now rather than the individual. Now there are exceptions, and in fact the first chapter of the book kicks off with a story about a colleague of mine. He's very much a long-term expert in predictive analytics, and he actually, when he was more junior, maybe about 15 years ago, he invested all of his and his wife's personal money into his own stock market prediction system. I'll have to leave it as a cliffhanger. You have to read that chapter to find out what happened. There are certainly cases, where the experts who know how to do this stuff can use it as an individual. But usually it's the organization. The organization's the one that's got all the data, and the organization's the one that is executing so many operational decisions a day where there's a benefit by driving those decisions from the individual predictions per person, or in finance, sometimes it's per instrument.
Okay. We are talking with Eric Siegel, who's an expert in data mining, came out with a new book called Predictive Analytics, which in fact hit the top, the #1 bestseller on Amazon in 2 different categories, econometrics and marketing consumer behavior. He also founded an organization called Predictive Analytics World. What is that, Eric?
Predictive Analytics World is the leading vendor-neutral conference focused on commercial deployment. So it's not a research and development or academic conference. There's 7 a year. In fact, there's one in London coming at the end of this year, October 23rd and 24th. You can go to predictiveanalyticsworld.com to find out about that. And it's a great place to just glance, look at the programs of these conferences. They're laid out in detail. You see all the different organizations, well-known brand name organizations that are executing on prediction in this way.
Okay, one of the ways that I deal in my day job, that in real life I'm a financial advisor. I do financial planning for clients, and I try to help them develop a long-term strategy, but they don't necessarily have enough data themselves to work with. So we often use a type of statistical simulation called a Monte Carlo simulation, which is where we gather a whole lot of market information and we run many, many, many simulations. It could be literally thousands and thousands of simulations of possible market returns in order to come up with a practical decision of what to do today. Based on what you're saying, it sounds like these are not the same.
No, Monte Carlo simulations are usually more about what I would refer to as forecasting, where you're sort of looking at computing the probable aggregate overall outcomes rather than that lower level of granularity where it's per individual person or per element. Are you talking about running Monte Carlo in order to help make sort of general diversification?
Asset allocation, right. Now, we'll look at a possible asset allocation for a client and test how would that possibly do going forward.
Right. So this is different. This is where the sort of on moment-to-moment buy and sell decisions, or in the case of marketing, who to contact, who not contact. In the case of presidential campaign in the United States, and the Obama campaign did this, who to contact, who to call, who to knock on, whose door to knock on, where all these individual low-level decisions make a difference. So is this, stock going to go up over the next 5 hours, or is it going to go down? So it's not something that sort of going to drive a broader high-level strategy about diversification. It's going to actually potentially drive one of the funds about which you're making those decisions.
Mm-hmm. And are there money managers who, in fact, use this type of predictive analytics to make minute-to-minute decisions or day-to-day decisions?
Oh yeah, making these kinds of predictions, and it's basically about, by the way, predicting better than guessing. So in general, you can't predict the future in an accurate way, but you very much can tip the balance in the odds in your favor by predicting better than guessing. So by putting the odds and playing the numbers game in a more effective way, you can make a difference. Now, the colleague I mentioned, whose story is written in the first chapter of the book, he likes to say that black box trading or algorithmic trading driven by these means is potentially the most difficult and challenging, although of course also potentially the most profitable arena in which to apply predictive analytics.
Eric, you were talking earlier and you mentioned a tool of a decision tree. On the Goldstein on Gelt show in the past, we've interviewed a number of chess grandmasters, world champions, who themselves have spoken about using decision trees in order to make better decisions. How does that apply to someone in your field doing predictive analytics?
That's interesting. I actually was a big chess player when I was a kid, but I didn't know that they actively use decision trees. So decision tree is not necessarily something that comes from a machine learning from data, but it can be. So you can take all sorts of things. There's a humorous decision tree online that went viral, deciding if you drop some food on the floor, should you eat it anyway? Well, it depends. Did your parents see it, and did your parents see you drop the food? Is there bacon involved? How expensive was it? So you can make these decisions, and a decision tree, you start from the top, you answer yes/no questions, and you go left and right. It's another way basically to sort of put a bunch of rules or business rules. If the stock market's 30-day window average is this much higher than its 60-day moving average, and it's at a certain relative price to the S&P 500, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then we think that there is a 3% greater chance than average that things are going to go in a good direction over the next so many hours. So it's that kind of very arcane and rule. So that's what decision trees embody. And you can capture those rules and tweak them and optimize them automatically from data. So I don't know whether chess players actually use decision trees that were created and optimized over real historical data. I think there may be ways to do that and may be part of the way computers play chess, but it's very much one of the more popular methods in predictive analytics applications.
I guess having strong computers helps a lot. When I was a lot younger, about 20 years ago, more, when I was in high school, with my two brothers, we decided that we were going to write software on our Apple II Plus for how to predict the stock market. So, of course, we couldn't get any data except by going to the library and looking up microfiche for historical data on the Dow Jones. And we entered all that in the computer, and we developed these algorithms, which we then tested with all sorts of what we thought was data mining and predictive analysis. And finally, one night at about 2 in the morning, we got it. We were right more than 50% of the time. So we all went to bed very happy, figuring the next morning we would start trading our algorithm. And then when I woke up in the morning, my older brother, who was older and wiser than me, said, it turns out our algorithm didn't work so well. Really, what we didn't notice, because we had such a complex program and all this data, that we were looking ahead at the next day's data
You get a moving average, but it's centered on the day instead of ending on the day, right?
Yes, and we've learned.
Yes, that is one of the killer. It's called a leak from the future. So Scotty on Star Trek would say, "Captain, we're losing our temporal integrity, but time matters." So there is a lot of potential for just simple software bugs, and these things happen. I actually have a story from that same guy, John, I mentioned, the colleague who used it for his own personal investment, where he discovered one of his colleagues had done very much the same thing. We forgive you, though, because you did it in high school, although you've kind of triggered me to geek out a bit. I also started on Apple II Plus hacking when I was a kid, 48K of memory. The Apple II Plus comes with a decision tree program, but it's not one that learns from mass amounts of data. It learns as you play the game, guess the animal, so 20 questions. So the computer asks you yes/no questions, and every time you tell it an animal it's never heard of before, you add a new question to help it differentiate. So it's actually in its memory building a decision tree.
Amazing. Wow. Well, all right, so we'll have to talk more about our old Apple II Plus programs that we wrote. We've been talking to Eric Siegel, who wrote a book that just came out called Predictive Analytics, the power to predict who will click, buy, lie, or die. It's critical that everyone listening buy the book to find out what happened to John in the first chapter. Eric, is there a website or a way that people can keep track of your work?
Sure. The website for the book is thepredictionbook.com. You need the first word, thepredictionbook.com. That'll actually bring you also information about the Predictive Analytics World Conference, and we've got a bunch of excerpts and videos and stuff about the book on there.
All right, and of course we can get the book at Amazon, and I'm sure every place where fine books are sold.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, Eric Siegel, thanks so much for your time.
Great, thanks a lot, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.